Well, here we are, Chief. 33 years in law enforcement, correct?
Correct.
9 as Chief. How does it feel to be at this point where you're retiring from this position?
Well, early on in your career, you're not even thinking about the end, right? I mean, you're in the moment, you're doing your thing, and then the last couple of years, kind of reality set in that, hey, we are getting towards the end. And, I've talked to several former chiefs here in Des Moines, about this moment, this approaching moment, and they said, you'll know when it's time. You'll be in a spot, both mentally and, operationally within the department that you'll just know it's time. And we've reached that moment.
So here we are, like I said, 9 years into the job. When you first took this position as Chief of Police here in the state's largest city, what were the pressing issues at that time?
10 years ago, when I stepped into that role, first it was, I kind of knew what I was getting into. I'd been part of the executive staff. I was running the operations division, so a lot of hands-on, boots on the ground type stuff. So, one thing that I always had to focus on in that position was relationships in the community, with the neighborhood associations, the business community, the residents, the elected officials. So that was kind of in place. So I kind of had that Rolodex already built. And then we started looking at internally, like, how do we advance this department? Some of it is programs and projects, and some of it's technology. As a police department, you're never going to be on the cutting edge of technology, if you will, but you got to be on the on the target there somewhere, to make sure that the folks doing the work have everything they need. So advancing that technology and then looking at, okay, what's the next great idea? And a lot of those came up and are fully functional today.
And one of those big pieces of technology were the body cameras that were implemented. What is that, right around 2017?
We started having the conversation in 2015. So it was a fairly new concept across the country. And, as the largest police department in the state, we thought, we need to be on the leading edge of this. We had the expertise and the staff to do all the research and do the testing of, different systems to see what would work. And, with the help of some very generous community members, some donors, we got it done, in less than a year. A huge project, but something we knew needed to happen and something the community really embraced and supported in terms of funding for that program.
And that was around a time when people were calling for more transparency, but it also helped to protect your officers in certain circumstances. So as a whole, has that program been pretty successful?
Yeah, the body camera program to us was a game changer. Across the country, you saw some police departments resisting it. Maybe it was the union, or maybe it was just the line officers, or maybe even the leadership. Here, they embraced it. They knew there's another side of the story that that we need to tell. And we've evolved in that program to a point where our equipment is state of the art. And you can't find a police officer down here that wants to hit their shift, without that body camera. It's been a game changer, and it shows that cops are out there trying to do the right thing in very difficult circumstances. So it's been really good for us. It's been really good for our officers, and I think it does provide that transparency, that the community deserves.
Absolutely. Now, the last time you and I spoke, it was new into your tenure as chief, and unfortunately, you had just lost 3 officers. 1 car accident, 1 shooting death. It was a very hard time. How did you navigate that situation, so new into this position, and moving everybody forward, even though it was very challenging?
Yeah, that was something you just can't prepare for. And then what happens, I mean, you don't have any option but to deal with it. Fortunately, in my position, we have so many talented people in this building. Not just great police officers, but great leaders and great friends who care about you, that you can lean on, and work through that. The community, the outpouring from this community. I mean, we couldn't have plowed through that without them. They were there every step of the way. So the one thing that that I found out during that time is you don't have to do it alone, and quite frankly, you can't. So I learned never underestimate the resiliency of a police department family, because they'll shoulder the load every single time, and then never discount the value of working in a great city where the citizens truly care about the police officers and the police officers' families. So we kind of had the perfect combination to get through that. I'm not sure that, it was a leadership success, if you will. I think it was a team effort, with everybody involved. So as difficult as it was, we came out the other side. Now there's some baggage and some memories that I'm going to carry with me. I mean, that happened on my watch. But we had the perfect recipe here in Des Moines, Iowa, within the department, within the community, to get through that. I think that was key.
Absolutely. Let's talk about 2020, because I think in the world, this was a turning point. This was when a dynamic shifted that maybe nobody saw coming, really. In the wake of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, we saw protests, riots in other cities, mainly protests here. How did you prepare for that moment? We kind of knew it was spreading across the country. How prepared were you, and how do you feel that went?
So that was unprecedented for Des Moines. Talking to some of the retired leaders, here in Des Moines, particularly retired police department leaders. I mean, that hadn't happened since 1968, and now all of a sudden we're in the mix of it. So it wasn't necessarily something that was on our radar. Nothing certainly that we had trained for or developed, comprehensive policies for, and we had to learn on the fly. Not the perfect scenario, if you will. Now, we may not have got an A+ for our response there, but I think we did pretty well. I think we scored pretty well. The best thing is, in Des Moines, we understood early on. We watched things happen across the country, burning down precincts, here, or destroying courthouses there, or state capitals. And with some of our law enforcement partners, with the state and other cities here, I mean, early on we decided in-house that that's not happening here. Like, you're not burning down our police stations. This is our only home. We got no place to go, so order of business number one is we got to protect this house. And our folks took that to heart and did that. And then we had to figure out the rest on the fly. We didn't have comprehensive policies. Day 2 of the protests and riots, we started working on that. We didn't have the proper equipment. We're sending people out there, without helmets or, without shields, when rocks are flying, and not a great scenario. We had to get that stuff going. So our response wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. Very proud of the officers. Again, very resilient, because we don't have a crowd control unit. I mean, detected by day, crowd control by night. Working 20 hours a day. That's essentially what we were doing. But they never gave up. They stayed the course. They did what we expect them to do. They kept their composure under a very difficult time. But looking back at how difficult that was, there's a true sense of pride for me on how our folks reacted. And they took a lot. They took a lot during about a month period. But they didn't waver. They stayed the course. They maintained their professionalism. If it were to happen today, we do have the policies in place. We have been trained up on that. In fact, some of that training is happening again this week, a refresher. We have the equipment. If it happened today, we could pull out a playbook. And that would certainly be much easier for us, and I think the expectations across the community would be better understood.
And in that community conversation, did things shift there? Did your strategy with how you dealt with populations that were feeling misrepresented or even unsafe in their own communities, did you change the conversation, or how did that strategy go forward?
So during 2020, as that all kicked off, that first night, we actually hosted a rally here in front of the police station. Gentleman called, hey, we're looking for a place to have this. We don't have a venue. We're like, why don't we do it here? You know, it's right out front. There's plenty of room. We'll shut the road down. And everything went well. And the good people went home, and those with other intentions stayed. Then the rock throwing started, and the damaged squad cars, and they tore up the East Village. And the next morning, you know, I got home at 4 in the morning, and I'm just thinking, well, what just happened? I mean, this is Des Moines, Iowa. We're better than this. And I think I actually said that in an on-air interview. Like, we're better than this. Like, we can sit down and talk about this. It didn't take me very long to realize that the true leaders in our community were not part of this, what was happening in Des Moines. And as we got into it and gathered intelligence and saw the same faces over and over and realized we don't even know who these people are. Some of them aren't from here. Then we realized we just got caught up in the wave of what's happening across the country. Because the true leadership in Des Moines, they weren't blowing up my phone saying, hey, Dana, you're missing the mark. Hey, Dana, you know, let them do this. Hey, Dana, you know, it's okay if they, you know, tear up the courthouse. That wasn't happening here. We were looking at faces that we didn't know. And then we realized what we were up against, and we were just going to have to control that. It wasn't a matter of sitting down and having a conversation, because there was no interest in doing that, and they really had no ownership in our community. So then it was just a matter of trying to control what's in front of us.
So from your standpoint, as the dust has settled, do you feel like those relationships are still strong, that you still have open lines of communications with people who may feel, you know, disenchanted with how their community is going?
Yeah, the established leadership in Des Moines has been there for years. Yep, still those open lines of communications, still have my cell phone number. You know, we deal with a variety of different issues and partner on projects. You know, the majority of the folks that were organizing what happened in 2020 are no longer here. We don't hear from them. We don't even know where they're at, you know, and we knew if essentially we could outlast them, that we would be in the spot we're in today. Des Moines today is just like Des Moines was in 2019. All those relationships are there, the partnerships are there. Unlike a lot of cities, you know, the pendulum has swung. You know, we're engaged enough. We can have conversations in Des Moines. You know, this is an award-winning city for a lot of reasons. And part of it is the great people, you know, that work in Des Moines and the leadership in our community.
From your standpoint and you doing your job, how important are those community relationships? This is something that you're known for across not only city government, but in our neighborhoods, that you and your officers are really engaged in the community.
Yeah, community engagement has got to be priority number one. And it should be in any police department anywhere in the country, large and small. You know, and we look at it from a mindset here, you know, in our building, like, you can police this community, which is easy enough to do if you're a police department. You know how to do that. You know where the problem areas are, and you deploy resources, you know, and or you can be part of the community. You can be at the neighborhood association meetings. You can coach a soccer team. You know, you can be on a nonprofit board. You know, you can be engaged in, you know, the arts like Bravo and all those things. We're a large enough police department with a diverse enough workforce with varied interests where we can get involved in a lot of stuff. If something's near and dear to your heart, you know, forge ahead. You know, we're behind you. You know, we have folks on boards all over this city: Boys and Girls Club, March of Dimes, Central Iowa Shelter and Service, St. Vincent de Paul. Starts right here. The list goes on and on. And the reason is our folks want to be part of this community. You know, if you have something cool going on in our city, we'd love to have a seat at the table, you know, because we'll help you make it happen. So those relationships, absolutely priority number one, has to be for any police department. And the incoming chief 100% understands that.
So people can expect to see that value continue on in the future.
I think that value, I think the community relations of this department will continue to expand as we get younger, and we're getting young quick here. As we get younger, those younger employees that are coming on, they have that service mindset. They come on board with that, and they want to be engaged, and they want to be involved. and they do have good ideas. So I see that growing and multiplying. Just as we grow up as a department, I see that community engagement going to a whole nother level.
Something that I think is really important that we address is mental health. We see this in communities across the country right now. We're in a mental health crisis. And that's been kind of a sticking point for community members on how law enforcement deals with people who are in crisis. You have a team, the Crisis Advocacy Response Effort. And this was something you really pushed through. Can you talk to me about that and how you think it's working?
Yeah, so the 2020 obviously didn't help matters, in terms of folks' mental health. But even before that, this started way back with Chief McCarthy when he was here. I mean, he understood a need for this, and when we started our first mobile crisis team, and it was a couple clinicians paired with a trained officer, and they'd go out and respond to those, non-emergency mental health type calls. Well, we knew that was very good. It was one of the first in the country, but it needed to expand. And we also got to that point where we understood that not every call needs a police officer. Certainly if there's a safety issue, yeah, we're gonna send a police officer. But we expanded to the care team where they can triage those calls. A clinician in dispatch can triage those calls and send the appropriate resources. If they don't need a uniform, we send the clinicians to handle that. If there's any type of safety issue that may come up, we send a police officer. But we also have all our police officers trained in mobile crisis response. So they can provide a lot of those same services. There was a kind of a battle cry for a while, like, well, people in crisis won't call because they don't want the cops. Well, that's not necessarily true, because they're calling 911 and they know full well that an officer is going to respond. And when that's a trained officer, you can do some of those same evaluations on the scene and get them the services they need. But if we don't need the officers, now we have a team that can go out and address those same needs. So it's been a game changer in our community. And every day I see articles and read periodicals across the country where they say, so-and-so PD starting an innovative program where clinicians will be paired with police officers. And I just kind of chuckle. I'm like, okay, we're 20 years ahead of the game. And it's pretty impressive. And the support in the community, especially the elected officials, in the city and the county, I mean, you couldn't ask for more. We found a need and they stepped in the gap. So it's pretty impressive.
And you think it's been improving outcomes for people?
Absolutely, and we've been collecting the data on that. How many trips have been diverted, away from a uniformed police officer to these clinicians, and it's pretty staggering. They're doing a fantastic job. They're housed out of the police department, so they're part of the police department family. We know them, we trust them. They're on our radio system. We know where they're at. They know where we're at. It's just a perfect partnership. And Sergeant Lorna Garcia has really taken ownership of this. Not only is she a fantastic person, but she's a tremendous police officer, and she's just grown this and expanded it.
Now, there was some movement in the legislature this year to bring local police departments into the migration issue, checking for people who are here illegal reentry. And you had spoken out against that, about how this just isn't a local police department's really jurisdiction, but it's not even feasible. Do you think this is something that we're going to see more of in the future, more of a push to try to get local police departments to enforce people's status here in the country, in the state?
I think it would be really unfortunate to force that onto local law enforcement. First of all, it's not something we do. Nobody in this building signed up to do immigration work, right? We have a federal agency that handles that kind of work, handles those issues. If that's what someone wanted to do, they would have moved in that direction. You get on a local or municipal police department, to serve the community, to impact the community in a positive way, not do ICE type work. So I think it would be unfortunate, first of all, in a city our size, in a department our size, we're going to if we had to do that, we'd put that on our to-do list and we'd never get to it. I mean, we have priority work that we need to do. We have more important work that we need to do. And part of that relationship building in the community is all factions of our community. You know, we're going to do someone else's enforcement work on a faction of our community that we're trying to build positive relationships with. Seems counterproductive. It's not a local issue. That isn't what we signed up for.
So as the outgoing chief, you would stick to that advice to any lawmaker who's listening, let's not try to push this one through?
Yeah, I think they understand my position on this, and you know, I think that philosophy in this building is going to be the same, you know, in the years to come. I mean, that's not our work. That's not what we do. So, you know, if there's something that they think needs to be done with the legislature in regards to that, you know, my suggestion would be leave local law enforcement out of it. We have other work to do, and part of that is building trust and building relationships in our communities.
And we had feedback that would disintegrate trust. And in a growing population in Des Moines, it would build mistrust, especially in our Latin community, with the police, or even fear. And it sounds like that's something you're trying to stay away from.
Exactly. We have a Latino outreach officer that's, you know, that's building that trust and relationships in our community. We don't want that to deteriorate. I mean, that's, you know, we're out there actively trying to engage this community, you know, and you know, with a stroke of the pen, you know, they can destroy all that trust. It's counterproductive to what municipal law enforcement is all about. That's just the bottom line. That is not what we signed up for.
Let's talk about some of those other things that you have been called on. And just in our office, we've noticed the gun violence lately, and I've spoken to a few of your officers about this. In fact, so bad that just about a month ago, 4 people injured, 4 people killed over 24 hours. Mid-September, 3 officers have been injured in gunfire this year. Is this alarming to you? Is this a trend that we're seeing, or do you think this is just kind of a fluke of the year?
You know, the gun violence is always going to be top of mind for a police department. First of all, it's extremely dangerous, you know, for the community, but it's also extremely dangerous for the officers. You know, and you read conflicting reports depending on, you know, what channel you watch. You know, gun violence is up. Oh, gun violence is down. You know, I think it all depends on how you feel in your community. You know, it's not just raw numbers, it's perspective. You know, if people don't feel safe in their community, then you have a gun violence problem, you know. In Des Moines, the number of guns that we find is off the charts. It's record numbers every year. And we're not talking about, you know, law-abiding citizens with guns. We're talking about criminals and felons and, you know, people that may have illegal narcotics on them that are toting a gun, which is obviously illegal. You know, rewind about 25 years when I was working the street, you know, if you found a gun on a criminal, you know, by the end of the day, everybody in the building knew it. You know, it was a big deal, you know, hey, great job, you got a gun off the street, you know. Now it happens every day, multiple times a day. Is our community as a whole, you know, in any more danger than they were 25 years ago? Probably not. But our police officers certainly are, as they approach those cars, enter those residences, you know, respond to those fights, you know, in the streets. You know, generally speaking, they're finding guns. That's the stuff that keeps me up at night, you know, and we've had officers shot. We've unfortunately had officers that have been killed. You know, you can't discount that. And the fact that folks continue to sign up to do this work, you know, and stay the course and be resilient and be, you know, situationally aware of what they're getting into and knowing full well that there could be a gun involved, it's pretty impressive. But they go out there and do it every day. But it's disturbing in Des Moines just from the sheer number of guns that we find. Are we as a community less safe than we were 2 decades ago? Probably not, because most of our gun violence, you know, is targeted attacks, and you know, Sergeant Prezik makes a concerted effort to let the community know that. But in my opinion, one shooting in Des Moines is too many. So It's always going to be top of mind, certainly for the police officers. You know, we use our community to be our eyes and ears, and together we'll continue to tackle it.
When we're talking about these guns, we've heard the term ghost guns brought up before. We know a little bit about that, obviously, but how big of a problem are these untraceable guns?
So it's a problem, and first of all, they can be, you know, you can get on the internet right now and probably go to 3 different vendors and get all the parts you need to put one together, and you can put it together in about 15 minutes. And then if you choose to, you can add another part that makes it fully automatic. That's a problem, you know, because now it's basically unfettered access, you know, to weapons. Then when we find them or they're used in a crime, you know, they're untraceable because we have no serial number. So it's certainly increased the number of guns on the street, you know, just because, you know, you can have it delivered, the parts delivered to your doorstep, but then not being able to do that follow-up investigation and see where it came from and who had it first, who purchased it, you know, and do that investigation to get to the bottom of it. It's pretty frustrating for us. Anytime you make a gun fully automatic, that's a problem. And if you see in any videos, even expert firearms folks try and fire, you know, a fully automatic pistol, I mean, it's wild, bullets flying everywhere. You know, it's almost uncontrollable. So even if it's a targeted attack with a fully automatic weapon, bullets are going to land somewhere else too. That's a problem. You know, so ghost guns, you know, they're trying to work on some regulation, you know, nationwide. I applaud their efforts. Anything they can do would be terrific, and we'll just see if we're able to make some progress. But it certainly has contributed to the volume of guns that we find.
$1 trillion question, and this one may be unfair, but what's the solution here? I think that's what a lot of people want to know. What can be done?
Yeah, and I think some of these vendors and manufacturers have, you know, we're not talking about the reputable manufacturers. We're talking about the people that, well, I'll make this part, you make this part. And if they order this and this and they put it together, now they have a gun. You know, now they're, well, I just sell parts. I don't sell guns, I just sell parts. Well, we all know what the outcome is. So it's going to have to be some, you know, probably federal regulation on those parts. Like, you know, right now you could make parts in a 3D printer in your basement if you wanted to. And that would be okay. Okay, well, that's just not okay, you know, because, you know, you're contributing to a problem that has some regulation already built into it, you know, and you've just found your workaround. So we need to establish some regulation to eliminate that workaround. I mean, if you want to legally purchase, you know, and own a gun, it's very simple to do. If you're using the workaround, you know, to get to that gun ownership level, there's probably a reason for it. That's what we need to get to the bottom of.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest challenge facing the Des Moines Police Department right now?
You know, there's the one thing about a police department this size is, you know, the work is never done. There's always going to be that next thing. You know, some months it might be recruiting. Some months it might be, you know, we've had a run of gun violence. You know, some months it might be, you know, IT and equipment needs. There's always work to be done, you know, in a department this size. So I wouldn't say that there's a huge looming issue out there. I think this department needs to stay the course, advance in a lot of areas. Chief McTaggart has a tremendous staff around him. The young talent coming through the ranks, the men and women, I mean, it's incredible to watch. I mean, some extremely bright men and women, you know, with good ideas and vision and commitment, you know, to this city. I tell people every chance I get, you know, 10 years from now, you know, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, wow, they took it to a whole nother level. That's the kind of talent and commitment that you have in this building. You know, I might walk out that door, this place won't miss a beat. In fact, they'll continue to advance. It's going to be really fun to watch.
You're very complimentary of Chief McTaggart. You were saying to me earlier that he's the smartest guy in the building. You didn't want to tell him that, so maybe I'll tell him that. But what makes you confident that he's the right choice for the next chief?
So I watched Chief McTaggart grow up in this building. You know, from early on, he came on with a group of very talented people as well. I mean, that class was impressive. They hit the ground running. And then he kind of earned his stripes, you know, in the investigative field. You know, he worked in robbery homicide for years and had a tremendous amount of success. You know, certainly one of the best investigative minds in the state of Iowa. You know, he ran it as a sergeant and a lieutenant, you know, commanded our detective bureau. I mean, when it comes to investigations, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's a very smart dude. He's also run our operations division. That's the hands-on, boots on the ground, everybody in a uniform, you know, everything from, you know, the 911 response to, hey, Ragbry's coming through town, you know, all that planning, the organizing. He has set himself up for this moment. He is certainly ready for this moment, but it's not a one-man job, and he knows that. So he'll rely on the smart people around him, you know, for that support. But his career path and how he's gone about it, you know, and learned and grown, he has absolutely set himself up for this moment.
What advice would you give him as he embarks on this new chapter?
Wow, when I look back, you know, I could probably write a whole book on things I learned from my mistakes, right? I might have to write 2 books. My thing for Chief McTaggart would be find that balance. You don't have to do everything yourself. You know, make sure you take time for yourself, time with your family. If you let this job consume you, it will. And at times that happened. But keep the focus on, I got to find some balance, because, you know, much like me, he's got a talented team around him. You know, they can help shoulder the load. But he's smart enough to figure that out already. I would like to say I wish him the best of luck. He's not going to need luck. He has talent, and he has talent around him. It's going to be fun to watch.
And what do you hope your legacy will be?
I don't know that I really left a legacy. I just feel like, you know, I was a dude that had a front row seat for some pretty cool stuff. Very lucky, and I think this department's in great hands.
And you feel pretty confident about where the city's heading to?
I do. I think, you know, and I had this conversation earlier this morning with a commander from the fire department. I was like, you know what, you know, we have an award-winning city for a lot of different reasons. One of them is because it's safe, and that's public safety. Now, we may play a small part in all those awards, but I think it's an important part. This city's going to continue to grow and thrive. It's a great place to live. We are unlike any other place in the country. It's the good people in our community. It's the good city services, including police and fire, you know, where you can go out, you know, go to the parks, you can go downtown, you can go to the events, and you can feel safe and you can feel comfortable. This city's on the right track. Has been for a long time. I only see it, you know, continue to grow and thrive.
Do you have a highlight of your whole career, not necessarily just as chief, but something that really stands out of, yeah, that was a good moment?
There's been a lot of ups and downs. Fortunately, more ups than downs, you know, throughout 33 years. I think some of the highlights for me are just the people along the way. Some great mentors in this building, including Assistant Chief Tunks, who was, you know, my right-hand guy, my confidant for the last 10 years. But also the relationships in the community, you know, the neighborhood association leaders, you know, the business leaders, people that we started working on issues with, you know, years and years ago, you know, and now we're not, you know, project partners, we're friends, you know, and when you get to that point, when you take relationships and build them into friendships, there's nothing you can't accomplish, because there's nothing you won't do for a friend. The people I've met and the friendships I've forged over the years, you know, absolutely the highlight of my career.
So is this it? Is this a full retirement, or do you have other plans after this?
I'm not going to say there aren't other plans. There's some options out there. So, I'll be 55 next month. I still got a little gas in the tank. I think I know a little bit about Des Moines. I think I have something to offer. I don't need to be the guy in charge of 480 people in a 24/7 operation. We've been there, done that. That's run its course. But I think there's opportunities out there. My wife and I, we're not going anywhere. Our kids are in Central Iowa. Life is good. We're comfortable here. But I'm sure I'm going to find something else where I can contribute. I think I can offer a little value somewhere.
So what are you not going to miss about this job?
Well, one of my first priorities, after I cycle out that last day, is to get a good night's sleep. Without the wake-up calls, without the worry. Now I'm still going to worry because I care about this place, but just kind of decompress. I'm really looking forward to that. The biggest thing I'm going to miss is going to be the people. Now the friendships and the relationships, they'll remain. But just the interactions day to day with the folks in this building and the folks in the community where, you get to see the amazing work the people in the building do, and then you get to interact with the folks in the community and see what's important to them. I really enjoy that. I mean, they joke in the building. Nobody wants to ride with me to an event because 2 hours later I'm still there talking to people. They've actually left me at events before. But just the relationship building, the talking to people and the interactions, I'm truly going to miss that, and being in the know. I'm kind of a information junkie. Like if we have something going on, I want to know every detail. I'm not going to be in that loop anymore, but it'll be okay.
Sleep might make that worth it.
Yeah, I think the sleep's going to be a big thing.
It's going to be amazing. Anything else that you would like to add that you'd like to leave our viewers with that I haven't already asked?
No, I think we're good. I just, my family is, they've given up a lot, over the course of 33 years. Absolutely solid. Never wavered, always been supportive. And everybody in this building knows what we do doesn't exist in a vacuum. Any success we have in this building is because of the support system we have behind us. That's just the way it is. That's the reality. So I owe a lot to them as well.
Well, congratulations on a successful 9 years as chief, 33 years in law enforcement, and we wish you the best of luck in whatever's next. Hopefully we'll hear about it. We'll find you.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.